we wanted to use this space to have this dialogue with our partner organizations, because we as German civil society organizations, we may have a certain perspective on what such a law could maybe change or could not change. But it's very important to also have this dialogue with organizations based in the countries where German companies have shifted their production to in the last decades in the course of globalizations, or countries where these companies are getting their resources from. So we find it very important to have this dialogue. We know that there is no such thing as one perspective from the global south. The perspective depends a lot on whether we are talking about the cocoa sector in West Africa, if we are talking about the textile industry in Asia, if we are talking about the mining sector in the Congo. So we are very happy to have Kalpona and Jacques here. Maybe next slide.
Just a moment.
So Kalpona is the director of the Bangladesh Center for Worker Solidarity in Bangladesh, and Jacques Mzumbungwanga is from the NGO CARF in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Gertrud will soon introduce them more in detail. We are very happy to have you both here. And next slide. In the preparation to this webinar, we have given them some questions, because we are interested from their perspective what they think the German supply chain law might change actually on the ground, and what it would rather not change. We are very interested to hear their perspectives on what could be the benefits of such a supply chain law, but then on the other hand also to know what could be potential risks and unintended consequences of such a law. And of course, if we have the time, it's always interesting to talk about what else is needed besides the supply chain law in order to limit corporate power, because obviously this law cannot be a magic bullet, and there are many other things that also need to happen. So I'm very much looking forward to the discussion, and I'm handing back to Gertrud, who will now introduce our speakers.
Yes, thanks a lot, Johannes. So we'll start with Kalpona Akhtar. She will give her presentation orally. Then there will be time for questions towards Kalpona Akhtar's presentation and input for about 10 minutes. Then we will listen to Jacques Mzumbungwanga. He will also have some 15 minutes for his presentation. Again, after that, there will be some time for directing questions directly to Jacques. And after that, we will still have time for a more broader debate on the issues the two will rise. We will end at 4:30 German time. So I'd like to introduce now Kalpona. Kalpona is Managing Director of the Bangladesh Center for Worker Solidarity, one of Bangladesh's most prominent advocacy groups for workers' rights. And she has, at the age of already 12 years, she started working in the garment factories. But because of her early trade union involvement, she later was fired and also soon put on the factory's blacklists of workers. So blacklists are lists where companies say we will not employ those people. Since the year 2000, Kalpona Akhtar has been working full-time as an activist. She has been fighting for the rights of women workers, mainly for security in the factories and the possibility to organize themselves in trade unions. In the year 2010, she was in prison even for 1 month. And for a tireless commitment, she was awarded the Alison Forge Award by Human Rights Watch in the year 2016. And Kalpona, we are looking forward now to your presentation, and I'll give you the word. I will myself switch off my camera. I will switch off my microphone, but I will still be there. So in case there are any questions, I can still assist you. So Kalpona, we are looking forward to listen to you.
Sure, thank you so much. It is so wonderful to sharing the screen with you all. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on the place where you are hearing from me or seeing me. So I already has been introduced. I just wanted to give a context of Bangladesh about like worker, textile worker in here. So Bangladesh is the second largest apparel producer in the world after China. And Europe is the most important market to us. In the Europe, 40% of, just 40% alone, our production goes to Germany. So Germany is one of the most important markets for us as well. So where we send our 40% of production in total of Europe. So we have around 4 million workers working for this industry, whom vast majority are young women. Those are working in this industry, and they are toiling their life and producing clothes for you all. So when we are talking about garment, it is so easy to come about supply chain. It is because this industry is so dependent to the West. This industry is so supply chain connected. So it is so easy the supply chain issues come. And it's so great to hear that the German government thinking about this supply chain law. It's one way it is giving me, wow, something is happening. But in other way, when I see there is a huge debate happening, between the right-based group, between the trade union, they are raising their voice that how it will be helping people having this law. It is giving me, in the same time a happiness, in the same time is consciousness. Oh, what exactly we are going to get? So as we say that our business and our workers are so connected to the supply chain, we are count the people who are bottom to the supply chain. So a supply chain law really meant so many things to us. And now the question is that whether this German supply chain law will be helping our people, the people in the production country, like Bangladesh, like Myanmar, Vietnam, India, Indonesia, or elsewhere, or maybe like in South America. So that's a good question to us. That's a, not good question, I should say that's a big question to us. First of all, a law, of course, good, but if a law do not help every layer of the people in the supply chain, then there is no meaning to that. For instance, if there would be a supply chain law or due diligence law in back 2013, and if we still have had this Rana Plaza accident, which I call a man-made accident, which was preventable, if there is an option in the law that a worker who was working in that factory would have right to say no to unsafe worker through this supply chain law, so our workers would not be dying in that factory, because the worker, when they saw crack in the building, they denied to go to the factory, but they have been forced, they have been slapped, they have been told that if you don't come, you will not get your wage for this month, and workers cannot afford that. So they rather choose to go inside the building, that death trap building, and the consequences we all know. 1,138 lives gone, thousands of workers left injured, many of them lifetime injured, thousands of them basically lifetime injured. And those have been survived, yet are feared to go back to any workplace, any building they see, because there wasn't any law that protect them from an unsafe workplace in that day or in that time. Glad later we had a code on Bangladesh fire and building safety, but it was for a limited time. But a supply chain law can help, can prevent workers to work in a death trap building. Later, okay, just go for the second phase. See, the Rana Plaza happened, the workers died, but when we were talking about the compensation, no one was there to take responsibility about our workers. The branded retailers, those has, putting these workers in a starved situation and made clothes by them, just clean their hand and say that oh, that's not my responsibility, because they're down to the supply chain and it is their manufacturer responsibility. No, a supply chain law, if there would be a supply chain law, if our worker would have access to make a complaint in German court and say, hey, this brand has made clothes in my factory, or I worked for him, and this company should pay my compensation, that law helped. But what we had to do, we had to run a campaign for a $30 million for a few years for these 4,000 over victims of their families. These people, many of them is still, waiting that if there is any other, way they can get more compensation, because they didn't get an emotional or pain compensation yet, because there wasn't any supply chain law that could help our worker. So one way I do appreciate that your government or your politician has taken the step to have a supply chain law. But if supply chain law just limit to a Germany, then it will not help Southern people. It will not help the people in the down to the chain. Again, if you have law, but you don't have a complaint mechanism, it will not help our worker. It will be not helping any worker in the production country. That law should be a full law where there is a complaint mechanism, when people can be put their voice, the German citizen can put their voice, as well as the worker in the down to the chain or labor advocates like us. We can put our voice on it and make complaint in the native country. That will make difference. So if this law become with all these clauses, then I would say I do support, and that will help the people in the South. Otherwise, a law can be in the book. There are many more has been done in past, but it will become with the empty promises. And I think many more empty promises has done. We don't need any more. Why I'm saying so? Because we are all still in a pandemic situation, and we are going through this. The German people, as well as Bangladeshis and other production country people, we are all in this situation, but consequences is so different. In your law, the business are protected, the workers has been protected, but in our law, we was not protected. Our workers wasn't protected. During this pandemic, thousands of workers lost their jobs. They haven't received their wages the months they have been worked. So, if there would be a supply chain law, the business issues can be written so clearly. So the brands seeing an emergency or seeing a pandemic situation, they just cannot run away, just canceling all the orders, the way they have been done with our people in here. Soon this pandemic outbreak happens, the brand and retailers has canceled all the orders and run away, putting workers in starving. And that's not happened only in my country. That happened with all production country workers. So the supply chain law should protect all those as well, that how business should be done, how ethical business should be. The people in the supply chain should not be suffer for any of the stakeholders' behavior. So this is what I exactly wanted to see in the supply chain law, or this is what I would say this kind of law will be helping. Many people might be talking that, oh, there is a risk. There might be a consequences that if supply chain law passed in German parliament, or it is being adopted by the people and government as well. So the consequences can be business will be come back to Germany, and there will be less business in Bangladesh, or production country and workers will be losing their job. If you ask me that, I would be saying, no, I really don't think that will be happen, because none of the brand, none of these brand or retailers or business group came to my country or Asia or Western Europe or in Africa for charity. They came to do the business. They came only when they saw they will get few cents less, they can make more profit, and only they moved. If we talk about textile and garment, if you go back 150 years ago, they wasn't in my country. They wasn't even your country. They were in the US. They were in New York. Then when the life has been leveled up, the workers' rights has been improved up there, they moved to southern state within their country. Then they crossed borders to Mexico and other natives. And they started coming to the Western country, Western Europe, then Asia, now here. And they will be moving to other country if they find any cheap price in Africa or elsewhere. So I don't see any risk to having a supply chain law which not only protect the people in the Germany, also in other nations like mine, which protect workers in the down to the chain. So this is really my input I wanted to share with you people regarding this supply chain, and I'll be happy to answer any question if you have. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Kalpona, for your speech, for sharing your experience and opinion with us. And yeah, so you don't need empty promises. That's what I have clearly understood. And yeah, the floor is now open for questions to Kalpona. Johannes, do you have already some questions for us?
Yeah, there has been one question, but I encourage others to also write down their questions. If you're afraid to do it in English, just do it in German and I will translate. Don't hesitate to use the language you're most comfortable with. So Kalpona, one first question for you. Dear Kalpona, could you please elaborate on the complaint mechanisms that you said are necessary for the due diligence law to be helpful to rights holders? To what institution should the complaint mechanisms be attached to? Brand company, local manufacturers, or independent initiative?
Okay, the complaint mechanism, it should be the independent, because the brand retailer or the government led complaint mechanism did not help us that much. I can example like when we have had the Accord on Bangladesh Fire and Building Safety. It was an independent institution, and workers themselves can raise the complaint on safety and freedom of association issues, and the workers can be anonymous or even they named. Their jobs are protected. So the workers can bring complaint, and the court responsibility was to bring all stakeholders together and investigate the case and go, until it is resolved. So, for example, one case was the workers, they brought the complaint that after a code inspection, the factory management brought all the weight in the factory. And when workers complained, the Accord did a surprise visit their inspectors and found it is true. But factory wanted to sneak away. Then the Accord brought all the brand, factory, workers, the unions all together and sat down. It took 9 months to investigate and get resolved, but finally workers own the case, the complaint, and workers have been paid 9 months of wages and reinstatement. It is all happened because worker jobs was coming to protect it, and there was an independent body who inspected. So in this complaint mechanism, what we want, it should be an independent body. And of course, the worker jobs are protected and their identity are protected. If that happens, that will be really in the law.
Okay, thank you very much. There are actually a number of questions on the complaint mechanism, so people seem to be particularly interested in that. There was one more on the complaint mechanism. For example, question to Kalpona, do you mean that there should be a civil law complaint mechanism or a company grievance complaint mechanism? So I guess it's a bit, I mean, I guess we agree that both are necessary, but maybe it's a question about the relation between the two. What is more important? What is important to achieve what? So maybe you could elaborate a bit more on that.
Yeah, I would say that both are important, but enforcement is more important, okay? There are many kind of complaint mechanisms around the world. Every brand would be happy to say, hey, I have a complaint mechanism. But when your auditing system is announced and management get enough time to coach worker on what to say, that doesn't help, okay? So the complaint mechanism need to be set up by an independent, that can be a foundation or that can be an organization created, and it is very clearly need to be saying that how the one step, how the steps are, and it is very understandable to the people in the who will be benefited by it, okay? If it is worker, then it needs to be translated that way, so workers do understand what it is. So that is complaint mechanism I'm talking about. And within supply chain law, I think there can be a few kinds of complaint mechanism. One can be before arbitration, so and after can be like just direct to the arbitration. Like within the accord that was there. If accord, all process would be failed, then we could bring the brand to the arbitration and file the court cases. And I can remember that two of the brand, I don't want to name them, but two of the brand has taken to the court. And it is all happened because the complaint mechanism was so clearly discussed, and it was so detailed. So people in the, who were beneficiary to that, they understood very clearly.
Yeah,
okay,
thanks.
Yeah, so I'm very sorry that we cannot take all the questions, and we have to make a certain selection. There are many questions coming in, and we can see if afterwards it's maybe possible to answer some more. But so one more question by Kalpona. In your opinion, what is the role of sustainability standards with regard to the supply chain? So,
So sustainability, okay. So what I believe the sustainability is like, one example can be the cheap clothes are not sustainable thing that we are talking about. Okay, we need to find a sustainable clothes, or we need to find a sustainable products for our supply chain. Okay, the sustainability would be that commit a long-term change rather a short-term. So that is the sustainability translate to me. Like I'd rather buying a 5 t-shirt with 20 euros, I would be prefer to buy one sustainable cloth with 20 euros and make sure that that can be washable a few times and that reusable, and the good percent of money goes to the worker. So it is just not profiting the brand, it is also helping the workers in the down to the chain, or people in the down to the chain. So that is like sustainability translate to me.
okay, Gertrud, how many more questions can we take before we need to move on?
We have still 5 minutes.
Okay, so there was a question. My question is about how to carry out the due diligence measures and prevention for human rights abuses. Do you see a risk that it might just be dictated by the brand instead of a joint development with the workers? How should prevention be done? So I think it refers to, I mean, people are afraid that it might just a law might just create some new requirements for companies, and then companies will shift the burden to their suppliers instead of really engaging, or they might do a superficial risk analysis which doesn't really involve the stakeholders. So I think the question refers to that. What's your opinion about it?
Yeah, my opinion is it is a power game. How much power you giving to whom? Okay, or if it is not a sharing power, then you always need to see that. Like again, I wanted to give an example. When this pandemic is spread, the brand and retailers, they could just run away, canceling the orders, and they say, that's not my responsibility. Your workers are starving, that's not my responsibility. Your workers are dying in this factory during accident, that's not my responsibility. Because this is a power imbalance. So if you give it more power, or if you give more protection to the brands, that that will be continued, even if we have the due diligence law, even if we have any supply chain law. If powers are not calculated properly, if the responsibility is not being disseminated properly, then we need to see this repetition again and again. So the brand, they always, the brand in every, like whether they're consuming the farming goods or footwears or garment and textile or toys, anything. I mean, every time they wanted to give more responsibility to the manufacturer's shoulder, rather taking them some responsibility that, okay, I will make sure that you don't throw the water in the dirty water or chemical water in the field. They never say that. They always say, I can pay you this much, but you have to make sure you have all these things. I mean, but at the end of the day, I want this bigger chunk of the profit. Okay, the world should not go like this continuously. So there need to be a changes. So the brand should take certain responsibility. They always, putting in the manufacturer's shoulder, and manufacturers also, like, they don't want to take responsibility of the workers. You don't have job. That is not my responsibility. But it is your responsibility. Where is my unemployment insurance? And it is government responsibility too, because I don't have social security. So the power balance should be, disseminated very properly. That is my point.
Okay, I think we need to stop here for the time being and continue with Jacques' presentation, but later on there will be again possibility to ask questions, or also to address questions also to Kalpona, to you. Okay, thanks so much, Kalpona. This was really enriching, and I've already learned a lot by your presentation and your answers. Thanks so much. So I welcome Jacques Nzumbumwanga again. He's the director of research at CARF, which is the Centre Russe pour la Recherche et la Formation, an NGO based in Lubumbashi in the province of Katanga in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And he holds a university degree in social sciences and management, and a bachelor's degree in legal and political sciences, and a master's degree in governance and public policy, all from the Catholic University of Central Africa in Yaoundé. His works focuses on natural resources issues, mining governance, socially responsible mining investment, extractive industry transparency, income distribution, and the issue of artisanal mining and sustainable development. And as I said, currently he's doing his PhD in Montreal, in Canada. And I will now have to show his presentation, just a moment. And yes. So, Jacques, we are looking forward to your presentation. And again, I will switch off my camera and my microphone, but I will still be there, and just tell me when when you want to continue with the next slide. So, Jacques, I hand over to you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, all of you. And I'm sharing with you about the German Due Diligence Act on responsible value and supply chains. What we have learned in the past in Congo, and what we want to achieve in the DRC Congo. since the mid-1890s, there have been links between mining and human rights violations in eastern of Congo. The next. And there have been also the link between artisanal activities and rebellion in eastern of Congo. So there's war with multiple causes, of course, but supported by mining have claimed more than 6 million lives to date. And poverty has increased in the mining regions, and the state has lost its authority and control over those areas and those resources. But several due diligence initiatives emerged around 2010 to regulate those conflict minerals. Those initiatives have led to mechanisms for certification and traceability of conflict minerals in the DRC. But in addition to problems related to the regulation of conflict minerals called 3T, tungsten, tin, and tantal, plus gold, in 2016, the problem of cobalt in the southeastern Congo was added. This is the problematic. This problem of cobalt is linked to the presence of children and pregnant women in the artisanal mines and human rights violations in the cobalt mining areas in Katanga, Kolwezi, and Lubumbashi. A number of responsible supply chains initiatives have emerged since 2016-2017 to regulate cobalt problem. As you can see, we have an history with due diligence links to Congo. And we are like in a puzzle of initiatives in Congo about due diligence. But our main questions with the German initiative is this. In this context and this puzzle of initiatives, what can be the effective contributions of the German law for the DRC? So for us, the German initiative have to fulfill the gap on this puzzle. But what we have learned in the past about this puzzle of initiatives, about due diligence, about responsible cobalt initiatives in Congo. What is the impact of this on the ground? The next. The next. Yes, on the ground in the DRC, the initial situation since 2010 has remained the same in terms of human rights violations in mine supply chains. The certification of 3T and gold for conflict minerals under the guise of threats and boycott of Congolese mining products have not put an end to the war and rebellions. They have accelerated the clandestine export of 3T and gold by neighboring countries that continue to export to Western and Asian countries to global value chains. The price of 3T, tin, tantal, tungsten, and gold have fallen in the region. Artisanal miners are the first victims of those measures because they are paying the brunt of everything that upstream certification requires of companies. Hence, for them, the fall in the price at the artisanal mining shifts. And this has reduced the purchasing power of households in the area. This pushed them to work the artisanal mines even harder to hope to earn more. Hence, the vicious cycle: poverty, illegal exploitation, illegal cross-border export, illegal cross-border trade, armed conflict, rebellions for control of mining wealth. States have not supported those restrictive measures at the same speed. For example, the Dodd-Frank home by Obama has been dismantled by his successor. The DRC's neighboring countries have not respected their commitments. They have opened doors for foreign multinationals to source minerals from those neighboring countries. As we know, still now, a lot of companies are sourcing mining cobalt, coltan, tungsten from the eastern of Congo. The voluntary measures and diligence of several countries imitated under the impetus of Dodd-Frank have not been backed by a real political will to reform. This was limited only to cosmetics reforms. Voluntary measures have shown their limits, the lack of transparency, we can say, while mandatory measures have been circumvented by companies by sourcing indirectly through neighboring countries or third countries that are leaders in the supplies of important parts of global chains. As you know, for example, some countries neighboring the Congo have not coltan, for example, or cassiterite or gold, but they are the first producer exporter of gold, first producer exporter of coltan in the world. So this is not correct. Complaint and access to justice mechanisms have not accompanied these initiatives. In addition, indirect sourcing techniques have been used to avoid the DRC on the surface. So for us, the next. So for us, the German initiative have some merits for us in Congo because there is a link between Congo and Germany, you can say, because most of you or all of us now, we have something from Congo in your mobile, in your house, for car, for electric power, or for solar power. So we have something about Congo, your laptop. So we have to collaborate together. For us, it's very, very important to know that German law is a way for us to get access to justice for people who are suffering in Congo in the mining regions. The merit of German law. The German initiative has the merit for us in Congo of extending the notion of human rights to environmental rights. This link between human rights and environmental rights. It's very important for us. And also, the merit is to set up a complaint and access to justice mechanism on corporate civil liability. This is an important point for the mining sector and the people of Congo, which participate upstream in the value chains of the German manufacturing, automotives, chemical, electronic, medical, aerospace, railway, armament, and construction industry, mainly through its copper. Copper comes from Congo, copper, cobalt. Congo is the first producer of cobalt in the world. Zinc, coltan, gold, diamond, casterite, tungsten, germanium, manganese. So for us, access to justice is the most important element coming from German law for the DRC. Recognizing this, companies headquartered in Germany, whose global value chains for mining inputs include the DRC, could make an effort to better understand the mining context in the DRC and enter into direct supply agreements, we hope, with more responsible companies that are evaluated as such in the DRC by civil society and by the government of Congo. Mining companies in the DRC also that directly or indirectly supply minerals and thus participate in the value chains of German industry will be accountable, we hope, and will have to comply with the requirements of their buyers. This could, in a sense, help in Congo to reduce human rights violations. This law could give Congolese civil society involved in mining and human rights issues the possibility to better accompany communities affected by mining and to obtain reparations and justice. But here, there's a problem. German law must allow or empower victims located outside of Germany, like Bangladesh, I don't know, in Bolivia, in Congo, to have the possibility to bring cases before German courts and tribunals, either alone or through German civil parties. But also, the next, the German law also have, it has a cost. The cost. It also has its cost. From the point of view of artisanal mining in Congo, we think that many Chinese and Asian companies that source from artisanal chains and who are suppliers to Chinese market that supplies German companies and global value chains could, if they want to avoid sanctions in Germany, cut off purchases from artisanal miners who are not in good standing in the DRC. This is the same with the treaty. But this could also be an opportunity to better structure the mining cooperatives for more and clear formalizations in Congo. And as we know from what we have learned in the past, every international due diligence which does not take into account the property of local communities the protections of their environment, their land, their cultural rights, and as repercussions on the living standard of local communities who lose not only their purchasing power, but also their environment and their land. To avoid the problematic artisanal mining, there is perhaps a risk that land and concessions will be given away only to mining companies. The next. There is some limitations about this law in regard of Congolese people. I think that for us, it would be important to clarify some key concepts. Yeah, this part for us is very important. We think that we have to, we can clarify some key concepts related to access to justice. Because for us in Congo, civil society and people who are working in artisanal minings, the most important is access of justice, to justice. So this concept needs to be clarified in details. For example, civil liability, duty to make an effort, and the concept of residence. For us, those concepts are still ambiguous and hide many things that do not allow victims to have access to justice. It's two techniques, yes. Environmental and human rights crimes in this context of Congo must be imprescriptible because some damage is only visible after many years. The duty to make an effort, so they show that the company have to make effort to avoid. But for us, the duty to make an effort must also, in our opinion, be accompanied by a duty to know, the duty of knowledge, duty of information, which will enable German companies to identify the suppliers well in advance, and to get to know them better before doing business with them. Let them not hide in front of the limits of the complexity of the actors. If you want cobalt, we need to know how cobalt or lithium comes to us in Germany. To ignore this is to fail in those obligations to know, of knowledge, of information. And no one's please can claim as a matter of law his own turpitude. Now the concept is the concept of operational command. Many companies, we think, can go through indirect procurement, knowing that their subcontractors do not respect human rights. What is the responsibility of the German company for the actions of its direct or indirect subcontractor, for example, in the Congo? What is the status of or responsibility of foreign big companies in Germany according to residents, or only doing business in Germany under this law? For us, it's not clear. For example, we know that Tesla will build a mega factory near Berlin. But what can be the responsibility of Tesla according to its links with Glencore to Congo in Germany, for example? what is the individual responsibility of German citizens or residents in Germany, but having business and commercial activities outside Germany for human rights violations in global value chains? For example, in connection with the mines in the DRC. For us, all those questions can be further investigated and debated. And also the scope of application of the law. 100 people for the company. For us, this is not very, very clear. Yes, because small companies can avoid the law. Next, conclusions. Next. Some conclusions. Finally, despite the reputations of such a law for German companies and its acceptability in Germany and outside Germany, there could be a risk at the international level of losing market share in the areas of mining supply in the DRC to competitors. Yeah, we are very, you can know this. For us, the strategy to be adopted is to encourage the German companies to do business in a transparent and direct manner with Congolese companies that are well listed and recognized as such. So we have to manage this. How German companies can take advantage also of strategic minerals in Congo, because it is important for your for the economy of Germany. But for us, we have to collaborate with the transparent companies in Congo. But also for us, through channels of economic diplomacy, ensure that this law, this German law, is recognized and included in the framework of German investment protection agreements in the Congo or elsewhere, like in Bangladesh, through commercial and economic cooperation between the two countries. Finally, it is also desirable that Germany should put in place a complaint mechanism as a country and not just a denunciation mechanism. And to study, for us, it can be possible to study within the framework of this law how to develop adequate mechanisms of judicial cooperation through specific judicial cooperation agreements for serious human rights and environmental violations with certain important countries in the South, in the value and supply chains in Germany, by German companies or by companies with significant final business activities in Germany. Next. So, thank you and denken.
Thank you very, very much, Jacques, also for this enriching contribution. And access to justice is one of the most important things from your side. The scope of law, how to really reach out to, in the case, to Congo. And I open the floor to the audience. Johannes, do we have questions already to Jacques? Johannes, you are muted. We don't hear you.
Thank you. So I will give participants 1 minute to write down their questions. In the meantime, I already have a first question for Jacques. So I found it interesting when Kalpona was giving her speech that she was saying she's not really afraid that companies will cut and run. They will not leave Bangladesh because of such a law. So, and this is actually one of the potential unintended consequences that we are currently discussing a lot. If we introduce a law, it might lead to a situation where companies will say, okay, I will stay away from the Congo and maybe go to Morocco, as BMW has been doing, in order to avoid being held accountable. So I would be interested in your perspective as well, if you see this as a risk that all the companies will leave the Congo with such a law, or if you don't see that much of a risk. If it's similar to what Kalpona has been saying, or if it's different.
Thank you so much, Johannes, for giving this opportunity to say something about. For me, my opinion, this law will help the situations of human rights in Congo. That's first. Second, we are not sure that companies will avoid Congo. This is not is not clear, but it's not the truth. It's not the truth. What is Congo in this game of mining? Congo is a big country, a very important country about mining activities. Congo is the first producer of cobalt in the world. Congo have lithium. Congo have coltan, tungsten. Congo have gold. Congo have manganese. So all green technologies needs Congo to collaborate. And two weeks ago, the European Commission published a list of critical minerals. From now to 2030, there is a deficit of cobalt and other minerals in European Union. And in this document, they say that we have to collaborate with Congo. You see, so Congo is a key country. That's first. And if you see the demand of cobalt from now to 2030, so it is important to avoid Congo because the demand is high of cobalt. And if you compare the demands of German automotive companies from cobalt from now to 2030, is a huge amount. So if they avoid Congo, where can they fill this gap? It's impossible. It's impossible because it's in Morocco. It's the first. Is the pure cobalt, and this cannot. The life of these mining companies in Morocco is not too large. So you see, this is not clear for companies to avoid for Congo. So, and also because of copper, for example, the copper comes also from Congo. And we have copper in the industry of constructions. We have copper in the electronic cars. So for us, it is impossible to avoid Congo. But at reverse, this law can ameliorate the situations of human rights in Congo, because they cannot avoid completely Congo.
Okay, thank you.
If they cannot source neighboring Congos.
Yeah, we have understood. I think the point is very clear.
Yes.
Just try to give to keep your answers short so that we can address more questions, please. Johannes, are there more questions?
Yeah, there are some more questions to Jacques, and then there are also questions to the two of them. I will start with the question particularly to Jacques. So you've mentioned already that there's a particular issue with artisanal and small-scale mining in the Congo, which is often informal. So there is a fear that the artisanal small-scale mining will get sidelined if the law is introduced. So the question was, what's your opinion? What needs to be done? What's the most, what's your suggestion to prevent ASM mining from being abandoned when a law is in place?
Yeah, this is very important. And we think that it will be better to collaborate at the political level through mechanisms of cooperations to empower or to ask to Congo to formalize the cooperatives, because in our mining code we have both industrial exploitation and artisanal also industrialization. So for us, the most important to protect local communities is to have good and very well cooperatives, organizations. And this is very important, yes.
There's one more question, because you also mentioned the fact that a lot of the cobalt from the Congo and of other minerals is trafficked to the neighboring countries and then sold from the neighboring countries. So there was a question as well, what do you think, how can corruption and illegal business through the neighboring states be avoided? And what's your suggestion, what needs to be done on that?
For us, for me, the kind of this law in Germany is very important because it's a local law regarding to all due diligence we have now in the world. We have also Chinese due diligence. We have European Union's regulations, but the neighboring countries still giving raw materials everywhere. We have Dodd-Frank also. And for us, we can think globally, but we have to act locally. So for us, this law in Germany is a local law. It can help to avoid all the links between the supply chains out of Congo with Germany companies. So for us, the most important is the access of to justice. To avoid this is to put a mechanism of justice and punishment against this kind of companies. Yes. Without this kind of mechanisms, it will be very, very difficult to avoid this kind of problem. And also, Congo have its own problems. You have to modernize his economy, also his infrastructure. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so and now let's get to a question for both of them to also include Kalpona in the discussion again. So, I mean, the question was addressed to Jacques, but I think both can answer, because Jacques was mentioning that we have seen a lot of rather inefficient initiatives in the last years. And I guess the same goes for the garment sector. So a lot of company initiatives, for example, which remain rather inefficient. So the question for the two of you, what's the most important aspect about an initiative in order to be effective and have a real impact, in your opinion? And maybe Kalpona can go first, and then I can also answer.
Yeah, I mean, last many years, we have seen a lot of initiative has taken by the companies. which is always has been failed for one big reason, and that change we want. The initiative has to be legally binding. If it is voluntary, then that doesn't help people in the supply chain, people, country like us or Congo or many other production countries. So any initiative that is taken, it should be legally binding. So that has a legal consequences. They only can make changes. Otherwise, everything is empty promises.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, sir, please.
Okay. For us, the first is mandatory initiatives, and this law of Germany is a mandatory. For us, it's very important because we have learned in the past that voluntary initiatives have failed. Yes, have failed. As a mandatory, as a local, not inside the European Union, but this is a local law. It can help a lot to fight this kind of problem. For us, it's very important: local law, mandatory law, and access to justice, links to global value chains.
Thanks so much.
Okay, there's another question which was addressed to Kalpona in the first part, but I think it's also relevant for the two of you. So how much do country-by-country laws actually help? We talked about that this law is just about Germany. So in how far do these national laws actually help? Or do we not need rather like a European solution or even an international solution? There's been talk about a global treaty, a UN treaty on business and human rights. So we would be interested in your perspectives. Like, how much do national laws help, and do we not need rather an international solution?
Kalpona, you may start. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, so the national law, yeah. So like in my country, we do have national law for, that protect workers. But, if we just break down very smaller thing about safety, that is not like a standard law that we have. But whatever the law we have, the main problem is enforcement. The enforcement is not happening in here. And it is because the power collusion between business and government, business and legislators. Many cases, our legislator is our factory owner. So that is one big our struggle. Every time we raise our voice to enforce the law, we are being pushed back or we are being prevented. So for the case, like us, as I have started saying in the beginning, that our business is so dependent to the supply chain, so dependent to the West. So in that sense, this law is important for us that Germany is having. But if it is have a voice from voice from citizen, or if it has citizen liabilities, or as me and Nuzombo has been said, that citizen from down to the supply chain or German citizen can sue the company if they are not abide by it. So in that case, it is important. But other way, like there are many business treaty that has been signed in a global level or UN level. Is every treaty helping us? It is just doing a yearly reporting, or sometime like a bunch of people comes here talking to the people and submit a report. Our government says, hey, we'll be improved, but in the end of the day, not much thing has been changed. So yeah, treaty is fine, but if there is a treaty that has consequences, that make more sense. Like European Union has a business treaty, which is called GSP, Generalized System of Preference, or GSP EBA, okay? So that creates business in here, in the ground for our workers. But if you even wanted to dig in the report, it is so difficult to see that what has been found. Every time we have been asked to do an investigation by the European Union whether workers and human rights has been, respected in country like us, it's never been heard. So even if you had that business treaty, sometimes it is not helpful. But if this treaty can't make my government accountable to enforce the local law, that definitely help us. But in the same time, as I said, that business are so dependent to the supply chain, so we need this kind of supply chain law too.
Thank you so much. Jacques, you also want to answer to that question? How?
Yes, I know. I agree with all that Kalpona said, just to say it. But I would just to add something for us. I mean, in the international level, things are not easy to be resolved. We have learned in the past that there is no case until now in the court, in the international level, depending to this. So this is a kind of the challenge between international level and local level. For us, it is important to think globally, because business is global and also human rights is global. But as in the climate change problematics, we have to act locally. We cannot only wait for the global level. This is very complicated and costly. And for us in Congo to have access to justice in the global level is more and more difficult for us. But in the local level, we can have, I mean, some actions with the local level. So I agree with what you said, but I want to add that we can think globally, but also act locally to do something that is good.
Thank you so much, Jacques. Johannes, do we have more questions or comments, contributions?
Yeah, there's one maybe last question, which also goes for the two of you. How much time do you think it will take for enterprises, for companies in Bangladesh and the DRC to insert the human rights due diligence in their processes? So, and this question comes up because the German government wants to introduce, if it introduces a law, there will be a period of 3 years for the companies to obey to these new requirements. Do you think this is an appropriate time period, or how much do you think would it realistically, what should be expected from the companies? How fast should they be able to introduce these processes? So maybe Kalpona can go first again.
Yes.
I would say it is depend on two things. One is will, of course, whether they wanted to do that. So willpower is first, and the second is how much pressure you can make. Until you can make any pressure consequences or image crisis for these companies or any legal consequences, they would not change. So if we can bring that to them, first of all, definitely the will is first thing, and then second, how much pressure we can make. That can be, legal consequences or other issues. That only can make them fast, and that fast can be 1 year, less, or a little more. But depending on the COVID situation, I'm sorry, because we're in a pandemic, we should consider that.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Jacques, you also want to answer?
I saw on the draft is 3 years, but this is the same model like EU regulation of treaty, and this for us is not good, because in the past we have learned a lot. Between this time of transition, business is very intelligent. Yes, they will change the game. You change the strategy. It's not the same. So after 3 years, we will not have the same effort, the same soul to do those things. They will change. So for me, learn by the past, from the past, not give them a lot of time, but also we need business. It is important for us, for our communities. But this game is not for us clear. 3 years is too much because the transition also is very complicated, the time of transition. They can change the game. For us, I mean, 1 year can be correct because all of the companies in the world, they know the importance of due diligence since years, not only today, even in Germany, they know, they have a framework. They have UN, they have OECD models. They know, but they don't need a lot of time to change the model. No, they know, they have money also for this, human rights. So give them 3 years is too much for us.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Of course, they should not give them the opportunity to bypass such a law and to find their strategies. Maybe we have time for just one more question, because we're coming to the end of this online seminar. I don't know, Johannes, is there still one? Maybe a short one?
Okay, I'm not sure if it's a short one. So, because Jacques in his presentation, he talked about the duty to know, or the duty of information. So it's not enough for companies to say, okay, we've done all we could, but effectively we couldn't know about certain things. So the question was, how efficient do you think the access to justice will be for rights holders if there is no reversal of burden of proof? So will it actually be possible for rights holders, for victims of human rights violations, to access justice if there's no reversal of the burden of proof? And I'm not sure if any of you has any thoughts to that.
Yes, I mean, this is very difficult for victims to have access to justice. For me, it's a kind of strategy to avoid victims to have access, because it's very technique. Companies can say that we have made effort to know, but we didn't know. It's not our problem. But the damage is there. For this, I'm saying that it's also the duty of companies to know in advance with whom they are doing business. Yes, they have to know. They have to know.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Carpona, you also want to answer to that?
Yeah, important element is transparency. If everything is transparent, then we don't need to be so fear to get, make it proof. If company put everything in their website, which is publicly available, then we can cross-check and make them accountable. Hey, you are lying, because we are in the ground. You people in the, somewhere in the top of the supply chain, and we have a connection. We always can, back and forth with the information, whether this information is correct or not. So transparency is one of the important element of this law should be. So I think that will help us to make things easier in terms of proof and access to justice.
Thanks so much. We're coming, I think now we have to end our discussion. I found it very, very enriching, and I still want to thank both of you. Carpona, thanks very much, and Jacques, also thanks to you very, very much. I think it gave you really a bit better insight into problems workers in the garment sector have to face, and also the workers in the mining sector, being it in industrial mining or artisanal mining, have to face. Thanks so much to both of you. And I would also thank our audience for questions, for contributing, for enriching the debate. And yeah, thanks also to Lara, and thanks to you, Johannes, for being a very good advocate of the audience. So I want to close this online seminar and just again, asking you to fill our feedback questionnaire, which will be sent to you automatically. And I also would like to inform you about our next online seminar in this area. It will take place on the 12th of October at 6 p.m. German time. And it will focus on the integration of regulation of supply chain laws on different levels. So we will have an expert on international law, and we will have an expert on EU law, and we'll discuss how can these three levels of national, EU-wide, and international regulations be integrated, and how could they refer to each other, and at least all of them could lead to our aim that workers in supply chains are protected against human rights violations. With this, I would like to end this seminar. Thank you very much. Thank you again to Kalpona and to Jacques, and also to our audience. And I hope to see and hear you all again latest in October. And take care, stay safe until then. Bye-bye.
Sure. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Merci beaucoup, Lara. Thank you. Thank you.
Merci.